One of the great things about doing videos online are all the wonderful comments I get from people and suggestions and ideas. And I did it, an unboxing, I guess it was, and a discussion a little bit of Dungeon Quest, the original Dungeon Quest, recently, and I got a few comments from various viewers in that unboxing about asking me whether I ever played HeroQuest or Advanced HeroQuest, and the Dungeon Dive in particular sent me a link, or posted a link, for this rule set, Enhanced Advanced HeroQuest, and I immediately looked at it, and once I saw it, I sort of couldn't believe that I had never seen it before, never known about it. There are rules in here for solo play, and this came out, basically, I have to check the dates, but also around the time when the original Dungeon Quest came out. I did not, just wanted to show you where it says the solo Advanced HeroQuest, some rules here and a bunch of tables throughout. We're going to get a good look inside this at some point. I didn't know about this at all, and I also didn't really know about Dungeon Quest for a long time. Those both came out during a period where I was definitely not doing any gaming at all, and I have since obviously done a lot of other things with gaming, and when I saw this rule set after the link was provided to me, I knew I had to have it. And what I'm doing here now is I'm going to be creating an adventure, and just sort of part of it is going to be just my recording, my thoughts, my changes, my ideas, because I've been asked by other viewers to do that. And I'm going to be basically using this rule set, and I'm going to be bringing in some other things. At least this is what I think right now. I'm probably also, or definitely also, going to go to my handy dandy, you've seen this before, Tome of Adventure Design, to create perhaps the backstory, perhaps some specifics in terms of where we're going to be going. There are many tables in here for creating specific locations, and I'm going to definitely be using that, but maybe not only that. And let's see, do I have anything else in mind right now? I think this is primarily what I've got in mind right now as I set out. I like the thought for this, perhaps, of using 3 characters, and I want it to be a very specific kind of a gamey goal that they have in mind. So I'm going to attempt to keep track of time passing, and I'll talk about the structure for that. I don't yet know more than that, and I may not even end up with 3 characters, but this is my thought right now in terms of what I'm doing. I do want there to be, as I said, time passing, mechanism for healing, some type of leveling up or increase of skills, and a specific goal in mind. So while I am going to be definitely doing some type of exploration, it's not going to be totally open-ended. It's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a goal. And it is going to be possible to die and to fail, and hopefully to succeed. What I've decided to do is use the basic structure of the Dungeon Quest and to, as an overlay, I guess you would call it, to both deal with combat, to create some kind of story, and to move the action along. I'm going to be taking some of the material and rules from HeroQuest. And to start with, what I'm going to be doing is assigning to the characters that I'm playing here. So these are HeroQuest characters, and they are going to be my main characters in the game. And we'll take a look at who they are in a moment. So I'm going to be playing, for example, I won't go through them all now, but I will be playing with Azoth the Faceless, who is the sorcerer with the spells, and I'm going to be using all of his spells, and I will be assigning him, this comes from the back of the Enhanced Advanced HeroQuest rules that I showed. I'm going to be assigning him these values, and the reason for this is that when we get to combat, and you'll see how I do this, I'm going to be using the values and the combat system from that system to conduct combat. And likewise, what I'm going to need to do, obviously, to make this work is, and I'll just show you again from this system here, what I'm going to need to do to make this work is to similarly map onto the monsters that I encounter some values from this set. And what we have in the back here are various monsters. So when we get to it, we'll find the applicable one and map that on. I could, of course, just jettison the monsters that come with Dungeon Quest altogether and pull in just the monsters from here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to stick as much as I can to the material from Dungeon Quest for that aspect of it. Additionally, I am going to take, or I have already done this, the victory conditions in Dungeon Quest are such that they are based on the acquisition of gold and treasure. And this is where I need to do some modifications and have done some modifications. So the first thing I've done is separated out the pictured gold pieces, from anything else that is a treasure that has a different icon on it. So for example, this sun, this crown, we've got some jewelry here, a plate, and etc. There's a book somewhere, there's a chalice, there's this moon. I've separated these out. Then what I've done is I have decided on what the equivalent treasure value is coming from this system, so that when we pull in, for example, if we did a search for hidden treasure, which are these special treasures here, if we pulled in this maps onto the magic circle, I think it's called, in these rules. So for example, you can see here my notes I figured out what all these things were, and then I looked through this rule book to see, and I called this the circular thing, and found when I was looking that it could be the magic circle from page 41. So we'll look and see what that value is. That won't go through, as I said, all of these, but just to show you, I've done this for every non-gold magic circle. So if we got to a situation in our game where we found this item, we would refer to the rules here for what the magic circle is. A large magic circle representing the great wheel of magic is drawn on the floor. The GM may place it anywhere in the room. If a hero moves over it, roll a dice. And in fact, we will say, because we're in the room, we will be moving over it, we will roll a dice, and we'll go to this chart and deal with the effects. Now, can I say that everything is going to match up, and maybe would I get an effect that doesn't work out? Well, we'll see, but I've looked through this, and I think for the most part it is going to be working out. So that's one example, and let's see what else. I'll give you another example. So this is I called this a magic wand, and I found here, the magic wand rule, which is on page 55. And so if we got to a situation where we pulled this in, we would refer to the rule set here, and we would get whatever we got. We would be rolling on the magic wand table, and we would be deciding what type of wizard we are. So we would be rolling on our relevant table and finding whatever we found there. That's one thing I've done. What have I done with the gold itself? This is a little trickier in a way because there are various values here. I knew that I wanted the gold to represent something that you could purchase, and so what I have decided that it represents is the purchase of the leveling up skills that come in the HeroQuest rule set, and you can see they're in the back here. I've made them up as cards, and we'll just have a look here at some of them. So collecting those gold counters will allow you to save money and purchase skill cards. So here's an ignore injury skill card, and again, for the most part, I think this is going to work out because these skill cards relate, for the most part, to combat, and I'm using the combat system with the HeroQuest. So the crossover, the link is, in translating the material from one game to another and making sure that once it translates, you then stay within that system so it can actually work out. So if we're having any type of skills here that are combat related skills, it's going to stay within the same system. So what I'm still in the process of trying to figure out is how much one of these cards is going to cost. What I want the trigger for getting this basic treasure is searching monsters that you slay, going back to very traditional dungeon crawls, and there will be a table to roll on to see if the monster actually has any of this. Once you collect it, I'm trying to figure out an average value of this, and basically sort of figuring you have to slay, I don't know, 3 to 4 monsters to be able to accrue enough gold to buy a skill, I think. I don't know if that makes it too easy or too hard. Again, this is not in any way meant to be a play-tested variant or anything like that. I'm just showing you an example of what I've done and how I've kind of modified this to make a game with a little bit more, a little luck mitigation into the very luck-based game. Now, once I started playing just the Dungeon Quest, when I got it, I was posting online about that, my experiences, and I was having a great time, and I kept dying, of course, and somebody said to me in a comment that only 12% of the games or only 12% of the characters survive a straight-up game of Dungeon Quest. So I don't know, upon what that stat is based, but, it certainly felt accurate to me in terms of my experience of it, and that's fine. It's what the game is, and I'm finding it really enjoyable, but my goal here is to give a little bit more luck mitigation in terms of the combat complexity, and also a little bit adding in a bit of a story to the game, and keeping some of the main mechanisms, including this time track. We're going to keep this time track, so there's going to be time pressure to accomplish the goal. The addition that I have made, and I guess I should point that out here, is there's this moon counter here, and there's a sun counter in here as well. If these are pulled, what I have said is that they can be used to push back the time track one slot. So there will be the possibility at least of adding in 2 more turns to the overall game to stop time. That's what I've got so far. I'm not sure if there's a skill. I don't think there's a skill that's going to apply to that from the other game. But so this is where we are, and here we are set up with the 3 characters that I have decided to play. I mentioned, you can quite see that. This is Azoth the Faceless. He is a sorcerer, and he's going to have all his skills. We can sort of see them here. And he's also going to have this reference card, which we will look at when we get to combat. That is going to be really just focusing on the wizard part here and these stats that will come into play. I will be selecting for everybody a random ring. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm also playing with the Cerelia. She is an elf adventurer, and she has her familiar here, the Bright Flame. And for her, I have chosen this High Elf character card. And finally, we will be playing with our Elf Ranger, the one who has the bows and arrows. And for that, I have chosen this character, Leaf Star, who has well, he's got a long bow here and also a sword. So we will be picking up, I matched it as best I could without actually going through the HeroQuest character creation, which of course I could have done to really get a better mapping, but that's the way I chose to do it to save a bit of time, and I think it worked out pretty well. I've got the cards set up here and those counters that I mentioned earlier. The last part of this part of the setup is going to be these are the rings, and we're just going to do well, I guess I actually want to look at them this way, so sort of put them like this, do a random choosing of 1, 2, 3 rings for our characters, and we'll just, I'm assignment. So we got a ring of healing that's going to go to Azoth, and we have this blinding ring. I can't remember what that does. To Cerelia, and we have a ring of opening. Can't remember that either. That's going to our elf ranger. So we got that. And I'm also deciding, I'm starting everybody out with one skill. This is coming from HeroQuest. And why? Well, just because. I talked about the fact that these skills are going to be able to be purchased during the course of the game. They'll be one-use skills, and they'll come into play in combat, but I'm going to just randomly choose a skill for each character, 1, 2, 3, and we'll see. Our wizard is going to have a rapid reload, and let's see, will that apply to him with his weapons? Well, we will hope so, and if it doesn't, we'll just choose him another one. So he's going to have rapid reload, and our adventurer, Cerelia, is going to have a repeating shot skill, and the divine eye is going to the elf character. It probably should be the other way around, but in any case, we'll see how that works out, and if it doesn't, we will make modifications. We still have a whole group of skills from which to purchase. It's going to be, I think, probably a blind buy, so you'll be able to just randomly, blindly get a skill when you purchase it. I don't think I'm going to go through and make an active choice. That's just why, again, just because. A lot of this is just because, and if/when I do this, play this kind of way repeatedly, I guess I would fine-tune it to see what made sense, but this is just what I'm doing right now. So the next up is going to be the selection of the quest, the sort of overarching story that somehow, hopefully, is going to work mapped onto DungeonQuest. And I'm starting by taking what is right here in the Advanced HeroQuest, turning to the quest section of the rule set. And for those of you that have the rule set, this is on page 79. And the first thing that we do is, actually, I'm wrong. It starts on page 78 for the quest generator, and the first thing that we do is we're going to roll on this table, which is right here, and this is going to be our big picture macro section of what type of quest we're going to have. And you can see it's a D12 table with a basic quest plot, and we'll just do the roll here, and we will get a 3. So 3 is going to be a retrieval quest. So we got a retrieval quest, and now we're going to go to the retrieval section, retrieval quests here, and we will see that we have to retrieve a particular object, and let's see what we get. So here's the retrieval quest table. Again, we're going to roll this D12 and see what we get. We got an 11. What will we be retrieving? We will be retrieving a healing staff, and the reward is special. I need to look up what that means, and let's see what we have here. Healing staff. All right. This again is just doing this on the fly. Healing staff. A healer has been killed in a raid on a village, and his healing staff has been taken. Staff has curative powers and could cure wounds and diseases, resurrect dead people, etc. Special extra reward if one of the players is smart. When they get back to the village, villagers have been attacked by monsters. Okay. Alright. Help the villagers with their afflictions. Alright, so we will figure out how that works. We're looking for the healing staff, basically, and as I go, I'll see whether there's any special rules that I want to come into play, or I should say special effects of getting that healing staff. Obviously, it would be to heal, and it does say that it can resurrect the dead, so perhaps I will say that if we lose a character in this, we will be able to resurrect that character. So Well, I went to my game closet and I got out my trusty sword. You've probably seen this in some other videos. It's usually in my update videos, but that's going to be my healing staff because the only other option I have is to use one of these things here, which would take this out of the pool. I think I actually showed this in the earlier segment. One of these wands. I think there's maybe more than one, but I don't want to do that. So that's the healing staff that we're going to be trying to get. And yes, the dragon, this is the dragon's lair, so the dragon is still going to be in play, but we're really trying to get this. This is the treasure that we're trying to get and to bring back out. And if we successfully get it and we have a fallen hero, we will be able to resurrect that hero. And that's our goal, is to get out of this dungeon before we run out of time with this healing staff so that we can save the villagers from what is happening to them. Let's talk briefly about the sequence of play and how we're going to follow the dungeon quest and sort of where we're going to go off the path of that. We are going to be drawing the random tiles here, and I just basically draw them with my eyes closed because I don't have a great container for so many tiles. And the versions that I got, I guess this is maybe from the Catacombs expansion. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else can tell me that why I have two different backs here. But in any case, so we will be drawing the tile as per the game rules, and we will be drawing room cards as per the game rules. Where we will veer off is, let's just take a look here. Any card that we get that has something like this on it, we will follow. When we get a card with something like this on it, an empty room, we are going to be moving into the HeroQuest procedure, and we're going to do a different search function at that point to determine where we are. And my search procedure, I've sort of mapped out here. The first thing we'll do, if the room is quote-unquote empty, we are going to follow the procedures in Advanced HeroQuest to determine what the room type is, if in fact it remains an empty room, and we will reference the rules here on page 15 for that. So we'll be rolling. These are basically all just rolling on tables, and there is a room table here, an alternate selection method, which I quite like because it will increase the chances of finding bad things as you progress through the dungeon rooms. So for example, if you are in the 0 to 2 rooms, you're rolling here, 3 to 5, 6 to 7, or 8 or more, so or previously entered. And I like this kind of escalation feature of it. Part of my version of playing this game will require that we also map out the drawings that we have, because as we'll see, depending on certain rooms, there's going to be certain features in the rooms and things like that that we will want to make note of for when we come back out, if we choose to go through the path that we've already discovered or if we choose to do something else. So the first thing will be to determine the room type. If it is a normal room, we're going to just be rolling for wandering monsters, and there's a wandering monster table. It's a 2d12 system. Basically, I've eliminated some of the other things to find. It's either a yes or a no, and you find monsters on a 2 to 5 roll or a 22 to 24 roll. And then if we do find wandering monsters, we go to the wandering monster matrix to determine what they might be. And this is a random table that will give you some of the possibilities for the monsters that you might find that are wandering. Again, in HeroQuest here, what's interesting is there are thematic tables for wandering monsters. So you could have, well, I'm going to be using what's known as the mixed matrix, and this will be sort of a randomized type, but there are matrices that are just beastmen or just orcs or just the undead or whatever. So more thematic things that can be used in HeroQuest, but for application to DungeonQuest, I'll be going to what's known as the mixed matrix for that. If we roll on, Let's go back to where I am. A hazard room is a different table that is going to tell us what the hazard in that room might be. And it could also be a monster lair. So that is back to the, we just see that here on the same page, here's the lairs, and this is just the general wandering monsters. If it is something called a quest room, this is great because it gives us a little more to do, and the quest rooms will be rooms that have more defined features in them. So we will be rolling to determine, first of all, what the furnishings in the room might be and what we could potentially be discovering with those furnishings. Some things are positive, some things are negative. We can be searching things like bookcases. There could be a torture rack there. So the quest rooms are possible negatives, possible positives, and then we will be creating those rooms. So that is the search function that is going to supersede these search cards. I will follow the rules where you could search twice in a room, I think, because I'm going to be having my adventurers, a big departure from the game that is the rule set of Dungeon Quest, is I'm going to have here an adventuring party. And my adventuring party is going to be the 3 adventurers that we're playing with, and you can see them set up here ready to roll. And they're going to be venturing forth together in the dungeon. So when we get into a room, they could do different search, each of them could do different search functions. And the reason that I'm having them together is partially practicality, because if I was playing with them all separate, the game would just be super long. And also thematically, it doesn't really make sense if they're all on an adventure together. It makes sense that they would be traveling together. The HeroQuest rule set also is going to have the potential for more monsters coming in than does Dungeon Quest. So that's another practical reason why it makes sense to have the option of having 3 adventurers potentially doing combat with the monsters. Let's take a shot here at entering and doing a couple turns at the beginning. The first thing I need to do, though, is replace my party minis here with just one single party indicator, which for the moment I'm going to be using this little fellow here to fit, because again, we're traveling as a party and we're not really going to fit on, we just need to know where we are. What I do need to do, however, is designate a lead character for each of the turns, so that if there is a tile effect, we know who it would initially affect. So while we're marking that off to the side, it's a little difficult to show everything on camera here because I'm also working with the rule sets that I'm doing the lookups in the side. But for the moment, we're going to do it this way. I've got, as I mentioned, this container here full of the tiles. You're just going to have to trust me that I'm doing sort of a blind draw. I guess I can sort of do a blind draw here on the video. It's a little hard with these tiles the way they are, but here we go. So here we go with the first tile. This is, I guess we'll just place it right here, and we will move into that open area. I think that's just an open area, and we will then draw. Let's see if we can come in here and show you what's going on. We will draw the first room card, and we have empty room. So per our rules that we're playing with, when we have an empty room, we're going to be doing a roll to see actually what type of room it is. And I went through this earlier in the video. We're going to be rolling 2d12s and coming up with the HeroQuest rules for what that room could possibly be. So let's see what we get. We got a 15, and that is going to bring us to, well, clearly I need to get better organized because I'm not rolling 2d12s. Actually, the general room type table is just a 1d12, so that's number one. But most importantly, I failed to start the game properly because, as we know from playing, time is of the essence. So I'm going to correct that. We're starting on the first turn, and now to see the general type of room, I'm just rolling 1d12, which is page 15 of the Enhanced Advanced HeroQuest, if you're following along, and we'll see based on this, we rolled an 8, which is a hazard room, and then we are going to go to the hazard rule set here and see what we get. So hazards here, let's see how I can show this best. This is the hazard table, and we will be rolling on it here. This is 2d12. This is why I got confused, because a lot of these are 2d12. So let's see, we enter right away in the dungeon, and we are in a hazardous situation, and we'll see exactly what's going on here with a 15 on the hazard table, and that is going to tell us that, oh, magic circle right away. Wow. All right. We have a magic circle, and I actually mentioned the magic circle earlier because that is also something that comes in as one of the cards. This is not necessarily positive. Now, I do have to say, I mentioned that I needed to designate the lead player for the turn, and in this case, it is going to be my my sorcerer here. So this is relevant because the magic circle does have implications for wizards, I think, that are different from others. This is also a 1d12 table, so we'll see what we get there. We got a 12, and this tells us fate. A model that stands in the circle receives an extra fate point to use during this expedition. Well, that's actually good. This is not a permanent increase. The power of the circle is temporarily drained by this and may only be drawn once per expedition. Okay. We didn't really talk about fate points. They are part of the HeroQuest rules, and the characters have a pre-assigned number of fate points, as we can see here. This is our wizard who was assigned initially 2 and has just gotten a 3rd one. In essence, these can be used during the course of the game, one-time use only, so for 3 times now for our wizard to change basically any effect. It can even reverse a death effect, so it can change a die roll. It can change an unfavorable outcome. It could change, if he fell into a bottomless pit or something like that, it could reverse that. So it's fate, and this is great that we'll have to find we'll have to find a way of remembering that we have an extra one. So that's what happened in our hazard room. That was actually pretty good on the first turn. We're going to move on turn 2, and I think I'll just take the mini out to designate who's in the lead. So our lead adventurer right now is the elf adventurer with her familiar. So she's going to be drawing, well, I guess we could place it either way. She will be drawing, and we'll see what we get here. We have pulled in another, well, that's got a black arrow. What is this with a black arrow? It is, well, yes, no wonder I couldn't see it. It's not a black arrow, it's a purple arrow. It's my early morning filming again. This is going to be Port Coulee, I guess is how you pronounce it. And so once we go through here, it's going to jam down, and we won't be able to get back out. I think we'll just place it here. And now we're going to see what else we get in terms of what might be in here. What is in here? Some vampire bats are flying around, and we get a d6 minus 2 damage to our, actually I think her familiar takes the damage first. The familiar is over here. This bright flame is going to take whatever damage, so we get a d6 minus 2 damage, and that is going to be, we'll mark down 3 damage points taken. And we will continue on. So again, per the rules, when we get something that comes from DungeonQuest, we accept the thing from DungeonQuest. It's only when we get an empty room that we go looking around to see what else it might be. So we will continue on with the next turn and switch out who's in the lead here, and we're coming in now with our elf character as in the lead. Oh boy. This is the Chamber of Darkness, and I'm going to need to look up the rules to see what special effects there might be, and I guess I'll definitely place it here. So I got to figure out what the special rules might be. All right, I found that pretty quickly. We don't take a room card here. We're going to roll d6 to see where we come out, and these are the options that we have. This is a 2-exit room, so we may get sent back to the beginning depending on what our roll is. So let's check out and see what happens here. We could be wasting time. We rolled a 6, leave by the other exit. All right, well, that's pretty good, actually. So no time wasted. We don't get to search, and, well, time wasted, basically, because that was a turn. And we're coming back with our sorcerer, and we will move and draw another tile. I have another normal room here, and we'll place it this way and move along. We're going to pull a room card and empty. So we're going to do another D12 roll to see what type of possible type of other room it could be per HeroQuest rules that we're playing here for you. So again, it's a D12 roll, and we got an 11, which is a quest room. So for the quest rooms, we will then be rolling on developing the room to see what it may actually be. And the first thing, let me show you now the rules for this here. So the quest rooms are the rooms that get the most developed with the HeroQuest rules. So we rolled on the general room type table, we came up with a quest room, and then we moved to see what type of quest room it is. This is also a D12 roll, so we will do that. And I'm also realizing I have not been doing my mapping, which I need to do, especially now, because on the way back out, if we choose to go back this way, whatever impact or things are in this room, we're going to need to know and remember to see whether this is actually a place we want to come back to or not. But first, let's check out what we get here. We rolled 11. I feel like I'm rolling a bunch of 11s. Rolled an 11, and that is a fire cavern. So we need to roll for the special effect on that. And the fire cavern table is also a D12 roll, and we rolled a 5, which is going to be swift enemies. Monsters have +1 speed and surprise. All right, this is where I need to start taking some notes. So we are going to have this negative effect of some swift enemies, and make a note of that. +1 speed. Surprise. And now we're going to give a little more atmosphere to this fire cavern here, and we're going to start rolling on the room furnishings tables to see if there is anything here that we could possibly search, find, get, whatever. And we're obviously going to, not obviously, but if monsters show up here, we're going to have to deal with them with a disadvantage. They're going to have more speed and surprise. But let's first see what we get. We're going to roll on the general room furnishings table first. And we rolled an 8, which brings us to, there's a cupboard here. So we'll go to the cupboard table, and we rolled a 6, and this gives us, the cupboard is bare. All right, well, we have a bare cupboard in, I guess that makes sense, right? It's a fire cavern, so probably wouldn't want to be storing things in there. Didn't get much that way, and now we need to roll to see what possibility of monsters there may be in this room. So these are going to be wandering monsters, and this is going to be, these are the 2d12s, and we will get monsters on a 2 to 5 or a 22 to 24. And here we are with no monsters. Well, we're in a quest room, and I think we're going to spend a turn with our elf here searching for hidden treasure, because it is a quest room after all. So we're going to spend at least a turn doing that. On a 15 or greater on 2 d12s, we're going to find something, and we rolled definitely great. So we are at 22. Well, we're going to get some money. We're going to, at 24 or greater, we would have, or 24, we would have gotten some magical treasure. But instead, we're going to get some money. So we'll just randomly pull out. Now our elf is going to get this money. And what does he get? Well, he gets 220 gold pieces, so we're going to give that to our elf, and you remember, per the rules that we're using here, at 500 gold, he can buy another skill if he wishes to, so that wasn't too bad, I suppose. So we did that, and we could search again. Maybe we'll search again. It's going to be the wizard's turn now, and maybe we'll search again. Why not? Why not? We're going to spend a turn and we're going to search again. That's why not, because we just wasted a turn and I first lost where I was. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, well, nothing there for the sorcerer, and so we're going to come in now with our adventurer, who will be drawing a tile and moving on to another place. If I don't get any combat here, I'll pull away and continue off camera until I do, so because I really want to show you that a little bit. Not good. Another chamber of darkness. So we saw this already. I guess it's pretty dark here, and we need to roll on this table, which is in the Dungeon Quest that we just saw. It's a D6 roll to see how we exit there, and it's a different part of the table, I think, because this one has 3 doors as opposed to 2, but let me find it. Alright, here it is. Right here. So let's roll the D6 and see. We rolled a 2. Which means we have to leave by the way we came in, so that's a bummer. We are back here in this fire chamber. I mean, we are certainly lucky that it is not some sort of trap. However, we've come back to it, so we need to see whether we've encountered any wandering monsters that have shown up, and if we have, it won't be good because they will be at an advantage. So for that, we are going back to HeroQuest rules, and we are rolling these 2 D12s, and we will see them on a 2 to 5 or a 22 to a 24. And we got an 11, so we're good on that. But that wasted some time. So now I'm going to cut away and come back when I get somewhere with some combat. And of course, as luck would have it, the minute I cut away and put the camera away, the very next room we came into, there was a goblin there. So I am going to be able to show you the combat. Now, what I'm doing in this instance, when the monster comes in as a result of the card, I'm finding the nearest equivalent in HeroQuest, and indeed there are actual goblins in HeroQuest with stats. There's goblins and goblin archers, so I'm simply going to roll a d6 to determine, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whether we've got a goblin or a goblin archer that we're facing, and on a 2, it's just going to be a goblin. So we will be conducting combat with this goblin and this goblin's stats. It was the sorcerer who encountered this goblin. Taking a quick look here at the combat procedure. This is our goblin who we're facing, and this is our character, the wizard, who is going to be encountering the goblin. Now, what we're focusing here on is the hand-to-hand combat line. What this means is, you see, it's a little bit fuzzy. That's just a reproduction I have, so I apologize for that. But we're looking at the weapon strength number here of the enemy, which in this case is a 5. Our goblin has a weapon strength of 5, and we are therefore referencing that number in the hand-to-hand combat line here, and we are shown a hit number of 7. So what that means is, in order to get a hit in the grappling that we're going to be doing with this goblin, when we start, we would need to be rolling a 7 or greater to do that. And actually, as it turns out, our weapon skill is a 5 as well. So coming here, it's the same on both sides, that the goblin is also going to need to be getting a 7 or greater. We're going to be just doing hand-to-hand combat. You'll note a couple of points, however. I mentioned earlier that we were encountering just the goblin as opposed to this goblin archer. Had it been the goblin archer, there would be also this ranged combat number value where we could be doing ranged combat. In HeroQuest, you are actually mapping out where the enemies and characters are in relation to each other, and you're using that range to determine how effective the weapon is going to be. Had that been the case here, what we would be doing is rolling 2d12s to just determine basically what range we were at, and we would be doing that at each round to simulate the sort of moving around of the characters. But that isn't the case here because we are only dealing with hand-to-hand combat. We have a dagger that we could be using with a range of 4, but we would be calling that hand-to-hand as well, close in. Another reason for that is pulling in this chart that I have that uses a 2d4 roll to determine distance. If we were dealing with a character that had the option of range, what we would do is initially roll on this table, and in a roll of 2 to 4, we would say we were within melee range, and then once we got to the other side of the room or farther away, we would say we need to use ranged, and then we would go to the rolling here to see how far away. I understand the scales don't match up, and this is obviously just a simulation, so we would be changing scale within that if indeed we were doing ranged combat. But here it's simple because we just have a goblin that we're grappling with, and you're rolling, there is a surprise value. We saw that coming into play had we encountered combat in that fire cavern, which is essentially who has the initiative. So we're rolling 2 dice, and the higher number gets the initiative, and then we will, based on that, go through the rounds of combat to see what happens. I need to get out a different colored die here so we can, all right, here we go. So we're going to be seeing who has the initiative. We will say that this black and red die is the goblin, and this is us, and whoever gets the higher number is going to have the initiative and get in the first round here. So we have prevailed, and we will be attempting our first hit on the goblin. Now, what I'm doing initially here is simply just trying basic melee combat, but I am the sorcerer. I do have spells I can use, and I also have my skill, which is Furious Assault, and it says I may use only the Furious Assault card in the first turn of hand-to-hand combat. I can re-roll any missed rolls to hit for that turn. Further, if a hit has been made, roll an additional, there's a typo there, 2 dice of damage along with any normal rolls. You know, this goblin isn't terribly strong. It's got a health of 2. I'm not going to use this right now. It's too early. I'm going to hang on to this. But I will need to be rolling in order to have a hit. And I could only use that the first turn. So if I don't choose to use it now, it's too bad. But I'm going to need to roll a 7 or greater on this D12 to land a hit. And we'll just come over here and see what we get. And we did. So we scored a hit on our goblin, who has a health of 2, and we'll mark that down. Now I need to clarify, we potentially scored a hit, because in order to successfully score a hit, what we need to do is to roll the wound die. And in our case, this is 1d12 that we get to roll, and we have to exceed the goblin, or meet or exceed the goblin's toughness level with our roll to get a hit. So in this case, his toughness is 5, so to see whether that is a hit, Yes, indeed, that is a hit. The goblin is rolling 2d12s to determine whether he gets a hit on us, but he's going to strike back, and we will see if he does do that, and he does. He rolls an 8, and then for his wound dice, he gets to roll 2d12 and see if he can meet or exceed our toughness level, and our toughness level is only a 4. So for each time he exceeds it, he will get a hit. So he scores 2 hits against us, and he is down to his 1 wound point left. So it's back to us, and we roll an 11 again. So we will see if we score a wound there by rolling over his toughness level. We do not. We strike out, we miss, and it is back to his roll, and he's going to be definitely landing a blow, and we will see how much wound he does with that blow. He's rolling well and does another 2 wounds to us. So we're down, we've just got 4 wounds here. I got to keep track of this. We've got 4 wounds here, and it is back to us to see if we can strike that final blow against him, and we did. We rolled an 8 against his toughness, so that was our second wound. We've taken 4 wounds, but we have successfully slain him. We will now be able, of course, to search the goblin for potential treasure, and we will be following the search procedures that were outlined earlier to see whether we get a magical treasure or a money treasure, or perhaps nothing that the goblin is carrying. And we will roll our 2d12s to see what we get. We're looking for a 17 or greater, so that goblin wasn't very tough and wasn't very rich, unfortunately, but that's an example of some basic combat. Didn't really get to show you too much beyond the basics because we weren't doing ranged, but you can see the potential for a little bit more combat complication than there is in the basic Dungeon Quest game. Now I need to clarify, we potentially scored a hit because in order to successfully score a hit, what we need to do is to roll the wound die, and in our case this is 1d12 that we get to roll, and we have to exceed the goblin, or meet or exceed the goblin's toughness level with our roll to get a hit. So in this case his toughness is 5, so to see whether that is a hit, yes, indeed that is a hit. The goblin is rolling 2d12s to determine whether he gets a hit on us, but he's going to strike back, and we will see if he does do that, and he does. He rolls an 8, and then for his wound dice, he gets to roll 2d12 and see if he can meet or exceed our toughness level, and our toughness level is only a 4. So for each time he exceeds it, he will get a hit. So he scores 2 hits against us, and he is down to his 1 wound point left. So it's back to us, and we roll an 11 again. So we will see if we score a wound there by rolling over his toughness level. We do not. We strike out, we miss, and it is back to his roll, and he's going to be definitely landing a blow, and we will see how much wound he does with that blow. He's rolling well and does another 2 wounds to us. So we're down, we've just got 4 wounds here. I got to keep track of this. We've got 4 wounds here, and it is back to us to see if we can strike that final blow against him, and we did. We rolled an 8 against his toughness, so that was our second wound. We've taken 4 wounds, but we have successfully slain him. couple of points to make as we look here at the party as it has entered the treasure area with the sleeping dragon and presumably picked up that treasure to make its way out. We're definitely out of time. You can't really see on the side, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 turns left. We're not going to make it. And I just wanted to come in with some thoughts about how this little system, I'm not going to call it a system actually, because that suggests it's much more refined than it is. This little project of mine has turned out. I think that the HeroQuest mapping onto this works pretty well, except for the function of this time factor, because what happens is you know, as in Dungeon Quest, it's a time pressure, but the HeroQuest wants you to go in direction of, I think, more exploration and more searching because of the material that's there. And of course, if you do that following the rules of Dungeon Quest, you're just basically running out of time. So there's that potential issue. And when I originally started this project and thought about doing something together, I thought that I would simply take the HeroQuest combat rules and that was it. But then when I was looking into the HeroQuest rules and realizing there was a lot more there that I wanted to use, I began to do the rooms and I did the overall quest and the rooms, and that added a lot, but it also began to pull away a little bit more from Dungeon Quest than I had originally planned. And of course, there's obviously a lot more that could be done here just with the basic HeroQuest, and then perhaps using the Dungeon Quest materials to map that out, which is, I think, the original thought behind the suggestion of my viewer who even put me onto this system. And maybe I will do that someday because there's more here that I want to explore. But I still think that taking the character cards and assigning them to the Dungeon Quest characters to provide for combat and to provide for some especially with arranged combat and creating some rooms and lines of sight and potential to hide and all that kind of stuff does add a lot. It certainly slows the game down, obviously, as you would expect, but it does add a lot. I didn't end up showing that here because we just got into a melee combat, and as the video was already pretty long, I just left it at that because that's what came up. But you could, through this system, have a situation where you zoomed out and actually mapped out what people were doing in a room, and if there were room features that you had rolled on, whether or not somebody was hiding behind one, whether it provided cover, you could be using all sorts of random tables to determine that, and take it to that extreme if you wanted to, or just keep it simple, relatively simple, as I showed here, by using the very basic combat stats. So that is a look inside a way that I have been playing Dungeon Quest with HeroQuest, and it is an involving yet I don't want to say generic, but I guess maybe the word I'm looking for is something like just common. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's iconic also. It's a standard classic. Let's go with classic. Standard classic dungeon. The exploration of the tiles. Oh, and by the way, to point out an error, I placed this tile incorrectly way back when, and I realized it and corrected it as I moved on through the dungeon. And so you saw this placement of this tile incorrectly before I noticed it, by the way. But in any event, the exploration factor here is great. The characters, the artwork, it is very consistent and, for me, involving, and I still think what I'm doing here with HeroQuest obviously is in rough form, but I think there's something there, at least for me, to add a little variety to the system, a little bit of depth, and I think for the next time I take this out, which will happen, I think I'm going to further diverge from Dungeon Quest, make it more of just an open-ended exploration and having some sort of quest mechanism, but taking away this track and just freely exploring all the rooms and doing searches all the time to see what I get and just encountering monsters, and really have it be a fleshed out system where the HeroQuest rules are bringing in many more monsters, and where the Dungeon Quest characters are going to be fighting them based on the character cards from HeroQuest in this setting of Dungeon Quest. And again, removing this time element and turning it into just an adventure exploration rather than a game with a beginning, middle, and an end. I think I'm going to do that the next time I take this out, and I think that will allow this little method here that I'm showing you in very rough form to shine. So that's a look inside Dungeon Quest HeroQuest, and as always, I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome your comments and thoughts on it, and suggestions for maybe improving it or further tweaking it or whatever. And thanks for watching.